Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's podcast. Joining me today is Dan Kelly, president and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Just a quick plug for Canada's podcast. We're launching this week a focus on small business series, and Dan, you're the first one on. So
Hey, fantastic.
thanks for joining us. So let's talk about the industry right now and where we're at. How would you describe the state of small business and small business owners today in Canada?
Look, it's been a rocky few years, Mario. This has not been an easy ride for most entrepreneurs, most small business owners across Canada. When we look at whether or not they put the pandemic damage behind them, you can believe it, only half still, 3 years out, say that they have now got sales back to pre-pandemic levels. For many businesses in many parts of the country, they're dealing with the legacy of debt that they took on during COVID just to survive. And of course, the aftermath of the pandemic brought about a huge additional list of challenges. Rising interest rates, cost increases on every line of their budget. Whether you're making money or not, your costs are escalating super fast. And then a gripping shortage of labor. We've seen tax increases on the part of government, and the real lack of any kind of solid picture of the economy for the next couple of years. The ups and downs have been not for the faint of heart. Look, small business owners are by their very nature resilient people who try to pivot and make changes as they go. But this has been a real challenge for so many over the last few years, and I'm incredibly impressed that as many entrepreneurs as they have stuck around to live a brighter day.
So is there any idea, like from your part or CFIB's part, of how many businesses we've lost, say, over the last 3 years?
There are some estimates. I think in 2020, the estimate was 60,000 businesses permanently closed their doors, 60,000 more than is normal. We got to, though, take a step back and recognize that business failures are kind of a part of the entrepreneurship ecosystem. I mean, business owners start up businesses, and some of them make it and some of them don't. We've certainly seen that in certain sectors of the economy. Restaurants, for example, if you look in your neighborhood, there are likely some areas that have been old standbys and the business has gone on for decades. And then there are others where, the location is turned over every 6 months.
Yeah.
Business failures should not be prevented. They should not be the source of any kind of shame. That is a natural part of entrepreneurship. What I worry about, though, is that the number of business failures that are as a result of some of the government restrictions that were put in place over the course of the last couple of years, and the debt that business owners had to take on through no fault of their own. That, I believe, is very different. It's hard to get a precise estimate of how many businesses have gone down as a result of pandemic-related restrictions, but it is in the tens of thousands. We're hoping that much of that is behind us. Of course, we have in the next few weeks another deadline of the CEBA loans, the Canada Emergency Business Account loans. That really worries me. 900,000 businesses, almost everybody that has a business has a CEBA loan. And those loans are coming due at the beginning of January 18th. If you're not able to repay the $40,000 that you may have as your part of the loan, you then see your debt go up to $60,000 because you lose the forgivable chunk. That has caught the attention of many business owners right now, and is something that we're actively working on.
Yeah. When you look at the debt, and I haven't seen a figure of late, but what was your standard that you CFIB had put out, that the average debt that these businesses have?
The average small business has taken on over $100,000 in fresh debt just to survive the last few years. Debt is not, again, not always a bad thing. Businesses take on debt all the time, as we do as homeowners. And if it's applied to good things like, planted equipment, a new process in your firm, a second location, another shift, that can be a good and healthy thing for your business. But
Yeah.
this was debt that they took on just to keep the lights on over the last couple of years, whether they're making money or not. And it's that debt that is strangling business owners right now. So even those that have got their sales back to normal or are now on a pathway to profitability on a monthly basis, they're wondering where they're going to get the money to get the debt anvil off of their neck. And that's what's dragging them underwater. So we really need some help with this. This is one of the reasons why we've been calling on government for some more flexibility on the CEVA loan to allow businesses at least more time to get the debt off of their books.
Yeah. When you look at, I want to just go back in a second, talk about,
Sure.
you talk about normal sales. Why is it that we're not 3 years later back to normal sales?
Well, look, some of it is that there have been some permanent shifts in the economy. So, for example, I think about our members in downtown office cores. If your business is the local convenience store, dry cleaner, shoe repair place, and your clients have or lunch counter, and your clients have all been office workers that are coming to their towers 5 days a week. You are lucky if you're seeing that crowd now 2 days a week, 2.5 days a week, maybe. So your sales are understandably going to be way below normal levels. Working from home has had a big shift in business. The other trend that happened during the pandemic, it just escalated that much more quickly, was there beforehand, but obviously online shopping versus bricks and mortar retail, that trend line, it has come back closer to norm, but there are many sectors of the economy where more and more consumers are flocking online, often to online giants, and that has taken the wind out of the sails of small business. Those are permanent shifts, and we're not going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle on some of those. Yes, they might ebb and flow over time, but business owners have to adjust. For others, though, it is just that inflation has taken a big chunk out of disposable income. So your service-related business may not see the same customer volume because consumers are getting their haircut a little bit less often. They're dropping their gym membership because that's now viewed as an expense that they have to do without when their household budget is getting pinched. So there's a lot of different trends, some of them temporary, some of them longer term, that business owners are having to deal with. And it's trying to sort out whether there is a pathway for your business to recover. That is the big question that is on the minds of so many business owners right now.
You talk about costs. Can you discuss a little bit of the payroll and the costs there to businesses and the impact that's having?
It is huge. Look, employees are expecting more than they did before, in part because we have fewer new entrants into the labor market than we've had in the past, and that has meant that that things are tight that way. Secondly, the pandemic caused some people to speed up their retirement plans or rethink life and took some out. There was a couple of years where immigration was a little bit slower than normal, so that took its toll as well. I mean, employers, one of the big questions that they're asking is, where did all the workers go? But in order to address that, employers have had to try to really be courageous in terms of some of the wage increases they're making to try to hang on to talent or try to attract new talent. That natural pressure in a tight labor market is causing wages to rise. Governments, of course, there have been 5 provinces, I think, this week that announced minimum wage hikes. So that obviously takes a toll, especially when businesses are struggling for money too. So there have been a lot of pressure. The shortage of labor is we're expecting an issue that even if the economy is shaky, there are more and more employers quite desperate for workers at this point. On top of all of that, the inflationary pressure on Canadian workers has been massive, and so workers need more money in order to just keep ahead, and that has put pressure on employers too, because they're looking to their employer to make up the difference that inflation is taking out of their household budgets.
A lot of also pressure of I guess things like EI and Canada Pension Plan too, right? Those have gone up too for employers, right?
We had an EI premium increase at the beginning of 2023. There's another one now that's planned for the beginning of 2024, a 3-cent increase for employees, 4% increase for employers. CPP, there have been now 5 years of significant CPP premium increases. And now this year and next, the maximum pensionable earnings will be rising significantly. The goal is to ensure that Canadians 40 years from now have a larger chunk of their disposable income that is now CPP accessible, and therefore they will have more retirement income. But that change is happening now, causing employers to have to pay more payroll tax and taking bites out of the paychecks of workers.
Yeah.
And again, with some expectation that the employer is going to try to make up some of the difference. I mean, look, we can't afford to have employees fall further behind either. I mean, they're not putting up with it. And I understand that from an employee perspective.
Yeah.
But if your employer is cash strapped, these are some difficult choices that have to be made.
Yeah. Do you? I don't know if you look at the state of small businesses elsewhere, whether it's in Europe or whether it's in the U.S. Is it a similar story?
Similar, but some governments have been helpful and some have been hurtful.
Yeah.
Ours has been particularly punishing as we've come out of the pandemic. Look, we have to remember that there are parts of Canada where the pandemic restrictions were much longer than in the rest of the world. And that really is one of the determinants of what's happened over the last little while. The pandemic, affected everybody everywhere around the world. But Canada, for some reason, hung on to pandemic-related restrictions much longer than most of the developed nations around the world. In Ontario, for example, in the city of Toronto, gyms and restaurants were closed for 430 days over a 2-year period.
Yeah.
That is, as far as we can tell, the longest lockdown in the entire world.
Yeah.
And so it's little wonder why Canadian small businesses are struggling. The aftermath of the restrictions has been significant. Other countries also didn't immediately after the pandemic start to jack up carbon taxes, jack up retirement savings plans like CPP or employment insurance premiums. We've seen huge increases on many key tax rates, minimum wages as well. So governments have kind of just continued to do what governments normally do, and have kind of ignored the fact that businesses are not in the shape that they were prior to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Dan, how long have you been at this?
Well, it is now 29 years in April. I will have 30 years with CFIB. And look, prior to the pandemic, Mario, I had a lot more hair than I do today. It has been, the last few years have been pretty trying. I will say, though, that I am blown away by how many business owners have persevered, recognized that they have a big role to play in supporting not just the family that depends on it as a source of income that owns the business, their employees, their community, and of course the country as a whole. Canada is very fortunate to have a large group of very, very strong small business owners who have withstood a bunch of shocks to the system. We're lucky that that's happened, and I tip my hat to small business owners from coast to coast.
Why do you think, considering the climate and the environment that's out there for small business owners, yet we see a lot that open, right? A lot opening startups and all that. Why do people do that, considering how difficult and tough it is?
It is one of the great things, and I will say it's one of the reasons I remain optimistic about the long-term prospects for entrepreneurship in Canada and around the world. One of the, there's lots of there are people my age sometimes have criticism to offer of the younger generation, but I will say one of the things that is really exciting is that a lot of people that are looking to get their first foot in the door of the labor force are not necessarily looking in the same way as perhaps earlier generations, as the ideal being a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
Many more people these days, young people, want to have jobs that they make up themselves. Paid employment might be a part of it, but the gig economy is growing, not just because some people feel locked out of the labor force, but because people want to work and have more flexibility. I mean, how many people are now passionate actors or musicians that also have side jobs where they actually own their own business? They're working in collaboration with other companies or self-employed people around the world to put products or services to market. And these are at the same time as worrisome signs about the economic conditions that we're facing. There are also times where there is a lot of shift in the way in which work happens. Governments want to try to put the genie back in the bottle and think that everybody wants to work in kind of the old economy with 9-to-5 jobs for, as far as the eye can see. But many young people don't want that.
No.
And I think that that's quite exciting. I give them a lot of credit. A lot of people are very confident in their abilities to create their own job. Our job as public policy makers should be to make that easier, not harder. Unfortunately, governments don't always get the message right away.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thanks, Dan, for joining us today.
Anytime at all.
All right. That was Dan Kelly, President and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, Managing Editor of Canada's Podcast, with a focus on small business. Thanks for joining us today.